But just on behalf of Professional Liverpool, welcoming everybody to this session with Herman Miller, the international and very well respected brand Herman Miller, I must say. I've worked with Mark previously, and I've worked with the team at Herman Miller previously, so I know how good their content is. And I'm sure this session here on the fundamental human needs and work will be equally as high quality. Mark, I'm sure, will talk you through the ins and outs of the session itself, in terms of is there going to be a fire alarm or not. But from my perspective, just to say, this forms part of a suite we're calling PL Education. This is the learn aspect of your professional Liverpool membership, if you like. So we're saying learn, connect, belong, and grow. Well, this is the learn element, and hopefully you do take something away from this. We have another session with Herman Miller coming up, I think off the top of my head, on the 18th of March, but Mark can confirm that. But both of these sessions, I think, are highly relevant, particularly given the announcement on Monday by Boris and the roadmap, because it starts to talk about the workplace, because I know people will be thinking again about going back into their places and spaces of work, but also about the home office as well. I know that the second session, which Mark's colleague Bertie is going to be doing it in March, is around that. Because I think coming out of this, whether that's on the 21st of June or whenever, both of those are going to be equally important going forward. And this hybrid model that everybody's been talking about over the last year, I think is going to really come to the fore. But without stealing any of Mark's thunder, because I'm sure I've just cut across some of his content, I'll pass you over to Mark now.
Great, well, thank you very much. So I can see the chat. So just for those that are just arriving, do use the chat box, and you can test that it works just by letting us know where you're calling in from. I will try to keep an eye on it. It's always a little bit distracting, but the chat box, for those of you that are on a phone, you touch the three little dots that are probably to the bottom or maybe to the right, and then you can select chat. Or if you're on a computer, it looks like a speech bubble, you know, like a cartoon speech bubble. Now, I know you can all unmute yourselves, but I'd rather if you could just help me by keeping it muted. But if you do have any questions, throw those in the chat box and I will get to them later. And we're also going to be having a poll a little bit later as well. So thank you very much. I appreciate that we're all very busy and we're probably zoomed out as everyone talks about. That's why I use WebEx, so you can be WebExed out instead. So I work for Herman Miller. We're one of the largest office furniture manufacturers in the world. So why does an office furniture company care about things like fundamental human needs? Why does it even interest us? And the reason is that at the heart of what we do is meeting the needs of people. And we design for the good of humankind, and that is really strong. And we have a very strong research heritage. It goes back a long way. And I wanted to quote, if I may, from this, which is from Robert Probst. Robert Probst wrote a book in 1968 called The Office, a Facility Based on Change. And he said this: the real office consumer is the mind. The subject starts there. More than anything else, we are dealing with a mind-oriented living space. Which is interesting because what we are saying is that the space that we're in affects the way that we think, the way that we react, the way that we feel. And it's really important for us to understand that, and I'm going to expand on that a little. And also in 1968, Robert wrote this: offices are supposed to express our desires. Why is it that in spite of great expenditure and effort, we still have substantial frustration? And I would say that we could have read either of those yesterday, because there are many frustrations. But I want you now to think, if you could, of your workday. I want you to think of your workday and you get home, and I want you in the chat box to tell me what things help make a great work day great? Now, obviously, you aren't going to be getting home because you're probably home already. But at the end of that day, you've had a good day. What is it that makes a good work day good? What is it that makes an experience of work good? So do use the chat box to put that. You're very quiet in the chat box. I can't see anything there. So for me, it is, okay, yeah, positive interactions, absolutely important. Collaboration, problem solving, and sometimes using colleagues to support. Yeah, community. Any others? Getting stuff done. That's what I was going to say, Andrea. Absolutely. For me, it is getting stuff done. Collaboration with colleagues and contacts. I've accomplished good work, great IT connection. It's really important that we have that as well, and some people are struggling with that, particularly if we are sharing that. Being recognized for doing a great job, that's really important. And there are lots of things. We are all motivated in different ways, and we need to have great work experiences. And that is our role. My role at Herman Miller is to share our insights and understand what makes a great place to work. So we created something that we call the engine of prosperity. And the engine of prosperity just helps you think about workplace being more than just being paid. And we talk about getting an equilibrium, a balance between the needs of the individual on the left and the needs of the corporation on the right. And out of that comes true prosperity. By prosperity, you might want to think of the word of success or happiness, but balancing the needs of the individual with the corporation, because we cannot ignore the corporation, but neither should the corporation ignore us. And getting this balance between being paid fairly, which is really important, but being valued, or I will use the word being loved, being cared for, being honored. Now they have to be in equilibrium. And also you need to work for the money, and for the love of the job. And it's really hard to get that balance. What's interesting is research shows that the impact of a pay rise is relatively short-lived. 3, 4, 5 months, and that impact has gone because you start living to that new lifestyle. But what we see is that when someone is valued, when they're cared for, then that impact lasts longer. But here's the problem. What one person values is really different to what another person values. And why is that? That's because we are all very different. So how do we put that into a framework that helps us think about this slightly differently? So we started to do some research around what we're calling fundamental human needs. And I wanted to say that it is based on people. It is not just on business research. It is based on life. And one of the reasons we did this is we saw some huge generalizations happening, and they are still happening today, especially around the generations at work. You know, we kind of put people in age brackets and say they're all like this. Well, I've got news for you. That isn't the way that it works. I'm sometimes like a Generation X or Generation Z, but of course you might guess I'm a baby boomer. All of us are really different. So let's stop putting people in pigeonholes. Then there's the thing that women like this, men like that. If you're of this ethnicity, you like this. If you work in this department or that department. So we said, let's stop doing that and let's step back and look at research around psychology, sociology, anthropology. We looked at military studies and find out what is it that our fundamental needs are, whatever our age. And from that, we wanted to understand what we call the sociology of work. We wanted to understand, first of all, how people affect their work environment, and we know that people do. You know, there are people that are mood hoovers. When they walk in the room or they're on that Zoom call, your head drops and you kind of think, oh, well, who are they? Why are they here? And there are other people that light up the room. And one of my colleagues, Shazia, is one of those that I look forward to being in a room where she is, because she brightens up the room. So people affect our environment. But the thing that interests me is that the environment affects us. And that's being demonstrated even more now when we're in unfamiliar environments. It's affecting the way that we think and the way that we feel. Some positively, some negatively. Homeworking has been a godsend for others and the worst thing ever invented for others. If you don't believe a place affects our behavior, can I suggest you go shopping to IKEA? Because in IKEA, they have understood that whole experience of how place affects our behavior. From the beginning to the end, their ultimate aim is to get you to spend money. You never go into IKEA for one thing and come out with one thing. They have made that whole experience an experience where they not quite control you, but they guide you and direct you, because place affects our behavior. And so we wanted to understand that. How does that also relate to our fundamental needs? How do we pragmatically look at this? And how do we apply it to the workplace? And that's what I want to challenge you to think about. And what we're saying is it's at the heart of human-centered problem-solving design, understanding what our fundamental needs are. Whether you're designing a product, whether you're designing a place, whether you're creating a program, whether that be, what we're trying to do, it's got to be human-centered and solving problems. Now, the reality is that I'm going to go through some fundamental needs, and I put something on here that some of you are so young you've probably never seen. It's a graphic equalizer. But the point I want to make is I'm going to share with you what are our fundamental needs, but not every fundamental need is the same from one person to the next. So let me tell you what these 6 fundamental needs are. We call them achievement, security, purpose, status, autonomy, and belonging. And I am going to go through each of these, but I want to emphasize something that I wish I could say place is the answer, but it's not. We have to meet these fundamental needs in 3 different ways, in my view, when it comes to work. The way that we manage people, that HR bit, the way that we understand the different ways that people are motivated, that kind of cultural HR bit, we need to understand the fundamental needs and manage them correctly. We need to give the right tools and technology that supports these fundamental human needs. And then the bit that interests me is the places have to support those fundamental human needs. And at the center of is this humanity, that we absolutely design for the good of humankind, but it isn't just about place. And those of you that are in the real estate world will understand I'm talking about HR, IT, and real estate working together in harmony as much as you can. I liken this to a 3-legged stool. Once one of the legs is broken, it's gone. I can take you some of the most beautiful offices, but the management styles are so bad you wouldn't want to work there. Or I can take you, to where you can have the best IT that money can buy, but if the place isn't good, or if the way that you're being managed isn't good, it starts to make a difference. So as I'm going through these fundamental human needs, I want you to think about how does this apply to you individually, because sometimes some of our best case studies are ourselves. How does it apply to you, and how does it apply to some of the people that you work with, and what basically what makes a difference? So interesting point, Peter. What makes the biggest difference? And here's the challenge. It could be different things for different people. And it also depends on the task. And also personalities. We've done lots of issues around personality. So there is no easy answer. That's why we need to understand individuals and treat them as individuals. So let me go to the first fundamental need. This is achievement. And again, remember when I asked you what makes a good day at work? Well, achievement was one of those things that you said, where we all strive for excellence and we want to take pride in our accomplishment. I call it the difference between good busy and bad busy, where you get home at the end of the day and you think, wow, I'm exhausted, but I've had a great day because I've managed to get my tasks done. In fact, one of the things I try and do, I try and tick off something from my to-do list as the last thing I do in the day. Even if it's a small thing, that's what my last memory I want to be, not leaving something hanging in the air. We all want a sense of achievement. And again, the point I want to make here is that we have to create an environment that helps people achieve, whether that's physical, whether it's with the right IT, and whether it's with the right culture. Some research that was conducted by psychological theorist David McClellan, and it was in his seminal work, The Achieving Society, shows that desire for achievement actually contributed to economic growth in many societies. When we all desire to achieve, it really does make a difference. When you want to achieve, you try that much harder, but getting that sense of achievement really does start to matter. And basically also some research carried out by some economists found that motivators like doing things for the challenge of it lead to better business results. Are you creating an environment, or do you work in an environment where you're able to achieve? Is the current situation giving you a sense of achievement, or isn't it? This is one of the challenges that we will now face, because we have to understand that some people have achieved more than they've ever been able to, and others can't wait to rush back to the office. So the first is achievement. The second one is security, and security where we desire kind of health and safety, but I want to break it down into two areas. It's physical security in all its forms. Of course, I work for a furniture company, so I'm going to talk about ergonomics, whether that's the desk or the chair. Good physical ergonomics. Really important. Do join Bertie's webinar. He's got some great advice about working from home. Really, really key stuff. So physical security, good light, good air, good environment, that you feel secure. Also, when I walk out of that building, that I feel safe. And a lot of us have had our physical security threatened, particularly if we have to use public transport. It's made us very nervous. But the other thing, and that is kind of where you can meet it from the physical, the place, but there's also this HR bit, the emotional security. Do I feel safe in the environment that you're creating for me to work in? Am I able to be myself, whatever my ethnicity, whatever my sexual preferences, whatever my religion, whatever my neurodiversity? Am I emotionally secure? And are you managing people to recognize diversity of thought, diversity of motivation? Are people able to be themselves? Are they able to be whistleblowers? Are they able to speak up? So the second one is security. As we're going through these, I'm going to put a poll up later to ask you, I'm giving you 6 of these, which of these you think are the most important to you personally? The next one is purpose. You can't really get achievement without a sense of purpose. We all want to make a difference. Purpose is really interesting. What's fascinating, though, is this. But actually, for people, a sense of purpose at work is absolutely critical to personal well-being. Look at this. Possessing a high sense of purpose in life is associated with a reduced risk for all-cause mortality and cardiovascular events. Any of you that have been unemployed will know as your sense of purpose gets deflated, your physical health starts to suffer. It actually affects us. Why is it that so many unemployed people have health problems, or even retired people, when they haven't replaced their sense of purpose with something different? It affects their health. And by the way, we should not measure our sense of purpose by someone else's. Someone might get a great sense of purpose by sweeping the streets or doing a job which you kind of think, crumbs, I couldn't do that job. And if you look at the frontline workers in the last year, their sense of purpose has rocketed because suddenly they are feeling valued. Interesting piece of research from Barry Schwartz in a book called Why We Work. If we design workplaces that permit people to find meaning in their work, we will be designing a human nature that values work. Do the people that you have a sense of value, and do they have meaning to their work? And this is interesting from Genza. Companies are adapting to the changing nature of work by refocusing on a workplace that offers balance, variety, and a sense of purpose. It's those characteristics that are key to creating a workplace that puts people's needs at the forefront. How do your people travel to work? And I don't mean physically, I mean mentally. Do they look forward to getting onto that laptop with a sense of purpose? I know what my purpose is. I know what it is, and I'm going to get that done. Or are they living in a world where they kind of don't know whether they can achieve because they don't even know what their purpose or their goals are? So purpose really is fundamental. Are you creating an environment where people have a strong sense of purpose? Another one is status. Now, by status, I don't actually mean hierarchy. A lot of people get confused when they see this one, although we have to acknowledge that some people, hierarchy is really important. And that really does matter to some. But what I'm looking at here is just recognition for people's contribution. That whole idea where we recognize someone's contribution. Really, really important. So I kind of liken what I do at Herman Miller as I'm a singer and I sing someone else's songs. And anyone who is a creator often finds that what they're created is other people get the praise when they present it. And a lot of creatives struggle because they don't have the status because someone else is presenting it. So I often think about this, that it's not just about the singer, it's about the songwriters as well. And in fact, I'm going to ask you to think of your favorite song of all time. Think of the name of the singer. Now think of the name of the person that wrote the lyrics. Think of the person that wrote the music. Think of the person that produced the song. Can you see what I mean? As we move further away from that bit at the front, the recognition starts to disappear. So giving people a sense of status and showcasing success is really important. And we need to do that through the workplace. And that's probably one that is more important via the HR, the way that we manage people. But for some people, place can recognize status as well. Thank you for your questions. I am going to come back to them. I'm not going to ignore them. And I really appreciate your observations as we're going along. It's hard to catch them, but I promise you I will come back to them. So the next fundamental need is this. It's autonomy. Autonomy where we all seek freedom for our actions. And in fact, of all the fundamental needs that is struggling and suffering at the moment in the current pandemic, it is, for me, autonomy. I love working from home. It's been great, except this. I like the choice to work from home. What's been stolen from me is my autonomy, my freedom to make decisions. Now, I have to want you to look at this word. It says autonomy. It begins with A and it ends with Y. Do not confuse it with another word that begins with A and ends in Y, anarchy. Anarchy is freedom with no boundaries. Autonomy is freedom within boundaries. It's really important to understand that listen, I'm over 60. I still have boundaries with my in-laws when I'm there. I have autonomy, but there are still boundaries of what I can say and what I can do. Any of you that have got children will know that they're trying to push those boundaries of autonomy as well as they're getting older. And this quote here, basically, organizations with high autonomy outperformed others in increasing market share and business results. And that was a survey in a book, and it was called Why Trust Motivates Employees More Than Pay. We've also worked with this guy, is a guy called Paul Zak. He's got a brilliant TED talk if you want to have a look at it. No webinars complete without mentioning a TED talk. But he talked about this. He actually is a neuroeconomist, and he looks at the power of the brain and how that affects economy. But do look up Paul Zak. But he said, my research shows that leaders can cultivate a culture of trust by building strong relationships within their teams, recognizing colleagues' accomplishments, facilitating autonomy, and investing in colleagues' personal and professional growth. So we need to give people autonomy, but this is one where for some people their autonomy that they want is really high, and for others it's really low. Some people love to be told what to do, others hate it. So autonomy, really important. And then the next fundamental need is this: a sense of community, a sense of belonging. And again, research from organizations like Leesman and Gallup show that this is really struggling. We're struggling with this in the current climate. Baumeister and Leary said this, that much of what human beings do is done in the service of belongingness. I don't work for Herman Miller. I work for my colleagues, Tracy, who's on, and dealers like Andy, who's on this call. I work for them. I don't just work for Herman Miller. I do things out of sense of belonging. I don't know what your hobbies are, but I bet you're often parts of groups and other people that share your hobbies. And a lot of what you do is in a sense of community. And what we have to do is be leaders who create a strong sense of us and a sense of belonging within their teams, because that's what helps staff to feel more positive about their work. You better be working hard to make sure your teams at the moment have a strong sense of belonging. And if you're in a team without a strong sense of belonging, make sure your boss knows. Let them know. And I'm going to go back to Paul Zak again, one of my favorite speakers. Human beings are neurologically wired to seek positive social experiences. These encounters stimulate the brain. They make people more cooperative and caring towards others within the group. So a sense of community. So I'm going to open a poll. So I don't know, Ken. So hopefully you can, I want you to choose out of these 6 fundamental needs, 3 of those fundamental needs. What are the fundamental needs that you think are the top 3 in your mind? And if you're on a phone, it should pop up, so do. I'm going to leave that poll running for a little while. And I just wanted you to also think about this. These fundamental needs are the same whether you're 6 or whether you're 66. They're the same whether you're in Liverpool or Liechtenstein. They're the same whether you're a man or a woman, but remember what I said is that they are kind of at different levels. The other thing that's interesting for me is if good society doesn't give this, then bad society will. So I am quite involved with the church, and I used to run youth clubs. I'm too old for that now. Youth clubs in the East End of London, and this is my aim. My aim was to give kids achievement, security, and purpose, and status, and autonomy, and belonging via good society, because if I didn't, they would find it from bad society. If you look at the growth of gang warfare, it's because they are looking for the things that you see in this area here. They're looking for all these things, and they think they are achieving, and they've got security, which they often don't have at home, a sense of purpose, a sense of status, a sense of autonomy, and a sense of belonging. And that is really important. If ever you've done youth work or ever you're working in communities, this is a fundamental need that we all have. So let's make sure. And how do we achieve that? Well, we achieve that by managing people correctly, by giving them the right tools and technology, and by giving them the right places. And at the center, you put humanity. So I am, if everyone's had a vote, I'm going to close the poll. Looks like we've got some votes. If anyone else wants to do that, hopefully that's worked. So hopefully you can see the poll results. So what have we got? We have at the top there, belonging and purpose. That's usually pretty normal, an achievement. And I have to tell you that's usually the way. And it's they're the kind of three that we have. So if you're gonna focus on any of them, make sure that you're focusing on those three. I wanted to go back before I move on to some of the questions, if I may. And thank you, Peter, for mentioning Burke Litwin, that I've not heard of that. He suggested his purpose, leadership, and culture are the transformational factors. And actually, you said leadership is a thread. And I think it is leadership through not just when you're in the building, but even when you're designing a new workplace. For me, leadership is important. That whole experience where the leadership are involving people, you know, I work for a fantastic company. And in fact, let me tell you our strapline. We are difference makers, we're all extraordinary, and we are better together. But boy, if you're a leader, you better demonstrate that. So that's really important that we accept that we can do this. And leadership is a thread that runs, but that's leadership as the management of places, leadership from the technology team, and leadership from the HR role. So I'm wondering what you've been thinking about the pandemic. And I do another talk called The Office is Dead, Long Live the Office. So I thought I wanted to throw in a couple of comments from people I know who have answered the question, is the office dead? And this is a guy I know, David D'Souza, he's from the CIPD, and he said this: the office isn't dead, it's just becoming far more fluid. And if you think about fluid, it finds its own level, and that is starting to happen. Offices are not dead, but they are going to be more fluid. And also what we've got is Ulf Bowman. He said this, I quite like this: the office isn't dead, it just smells funny. And in fact, any of you that know Frank Zappa said this about jazz, that actually it's going off a bit. So this is the biggest chance we've ever had to make sure that we refresh the office. Michael Erickson Bueling, he said this: He said that the office is dead, long live the exchange place. The new place of work will be a place for meaningful exchange designed to optimize the quality of the interaction that takes place there. Now, I don't want you to think that the workplace is only for collaboration, because I know there's some of you that will be really glad to eventually get back to the office to work on focus work, because it's not always easy at home. Your circumstances don't allow it. For a year, I've got a construction site next door to me. The house next door has been ripped apart. Guys, it's not easy to focus at home, and I've got a nice house and my own office, and boy, it's a pain sometimes. Neil Usher, a great writer, he's written a book called Elemental Workplace and Elemental Change. I absolutely recommend them, but he said this: the existence of the office is assured, but as part of the genre of physical space. In other words, it's just another place for us to work. And the term that Andrew used at the beginning is this whole idea that actually we're going to be working in a hybrid, and a hybrid means a mixture. And again, you've got to go back to those fundamental needs. You've got to give people choice and autonomy. And I thought that was really important. And I also wanted to go back to this quote, this piece of research of 1968, where Robert Probst wrote, "The business of people talking to each other in offices is a very serious consideration. It is by far the most expensive achievement of offices, the grouping of people that allows conversational exchange. If we cannot design offices that support interaction and collaboration," and I do another talk about the psychology of collaboration, and we need places to interact, but we need places for introverts and extroverts to interact as well. It's really important. But at the center of it all, we must have people.
Sometime in the early 1930s, DJ Dupree and his brand new director of design, Gilbert Rohde, were looking at a photograph of well-dressed people in a swank New York apartment. "What do you see?" asked Rohde. "Nice apartment and nice furniture," said DJ, because he was president of the Herman Miller Furniture Company. Rohde responded, "Forget the furniture and ignore the apartment. The most important thing in the photograph is this: the people and what they're doing." And so DJ learned an important lesson we remember to this very day. Design begins with people. The best design helps people do what they need and want to do. Whether they're in offices, hospitals, homes, or classrooms, no matter where these people are, Herman Miller design begins with people.
So I just wanted to leave you with this engine of prosperity or happiness and success. It's this balance between the individual and the group, but also feeling valued and doing a job you love. And I just wanted to also just give a call out to the our frontline workers, and especially the NHS. For too long, what we did is we exploited people doing a job they loved and not paying them enough. So getting that balance is right. It's no good doing a job you love if you can't feed your children. So getting that balance right is really important. But if you've got enough money, you're never, and all you ever work for is money, you're never gonna be satisfied. So I really appreciate your time. I'm going to stop sharing, and if you've got any questions that you have for me, do let me know. So has anyone got any questions at all? Let me just have a look at the chat, and I think you can unmute yourself if you want to ask them personally. For some reason, I can't see the questions. Bear with me a second. Any questions at all? Do feel free. Okay, I can see the chat now. Anyone got any questions?
Mark, could I just raise not a question so much as an observation, but I'd appreciate your take on it. There's going to be a massive set of questions for leaders about the speed at which people return to the office place, and should they at all. And I'm just thinking about the types of issues that we should be thinking about as leaders arrive at that decision, because it's not just a case of personal preference. I think it's, for my take, there's several issues that we need to think about, and we need to sort of be intelligent in our thoughts. So just appreciate your thought on what types of things should we be asking ourselves before we make those choices.
Yeah. For me, the answer is why. Well, the question is, why are they coming back to the office? What is the purpose? And that's the biggest thing now that we're seeing. What is the reason? And that is, for those that are asking to come back to the office, why? And if you're asking the people to come back to the office, you need to know why. What is that reason? Absolute clarity, rather than I saw, the guy from the big bank, Goldman Sachs, say it's just not our culture. Well, what does that actually mean? Go beyond that. Explain what that actually means. I think you might be surveyed to death, but boy, you better speak to individuals and find out what they need. What do they currently like about working from home, and what do they hate? What are they missing about the office? But going back to this whole thing is, what is the purpose of the office? For me, that's got to be at the core of it. And boy, some financial departments are going to be asking that as well, because you're going to have to convince the financial team why you still need all the office space that companies might have. If you want to keep it, what's the purpose of that as well? Human-centered design. And I don't just mean physical design, I mean process design, or the whole, we got some huge challenges ahead, Peter. Grief, that I don't want to get into the debate, but the vaccine passport. Do I feel safe? Do you feel safe? What's the long-term psychological impact of all this? Listen, 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 and listen.
Thank you.
Anyone else got any? Well, I try to finish always 10 minutes before the hour, because it gives you, I want to say 10 minutes back, but at least you can have a break before your next meeting if you've got any. I am going to share the recording of this afterwards. Just that I am going to do a little bit of promotion. If you go to our website, I do lots of events. So if you go to www.hminsightgroup.com and click on the events, we've got some really fascinating talks coming up. Not all Herman Miller speakers. There's one coming up on the power of wonder at work. Also resilience as well, so do have a look at that. Really appreciate it. Thank you. I really appreciate your time, everyone.